Don't you know drugs are everywhere, drugs are everywhere, drugs are everywhere. You can't stop it. Criminalize it, make a profit, a full and sorrow in the ones every day. Drugs are everywhere, drugs are everywhere.
Hey, Murph here. Well, I'm out of breath already, and that was literally the first second of the intro. How about them apples? All right, I'm Murph. I'm a former heroin addict, current alcoholic, and you're tuned into Self-Medicated Weekly Dose, a podcast about drugs and the people who use them. As always, this program is inspired by the harm reduction movement, informed by my personal experience using all sorts of drugs for damn near 30 years, and enlightened by my special guests. And today, there will be no enlightenment. That's right, it's an unenlightened solo episode, just going to be me ranting and raving and pissing into the wind. Because there's a topic specifically that has come up here that I wanted to address from a personal standpoint, and of course, go from the micro to the macro, and talk about it on a large scale. And it's something that I've brought up a few times, for listeners who consistently tune into the program. You've heard me, I'm sure, mention it in passing here and there. But basically, this is about the Adderall shortage, this episode in particular. And I just want to say right at the top, please forgive me if I'm a little punchy for a few reasons. Number one, it is 101 degrees today as I record this episode at this very moment. I'm looking at the thermometer. I mean, I'm indoors, but I'm looking at with no AC or fans because those will interfere with the sound. You got to have good sound, you see. When you're recording here, you can't have all these bells and whistles on. But anyhow, I'm looking at the thermometer outside. It's 101 degrees Fahrenheit in sunny Portland, Oregon. So, you might hear a little bit of brow sweat flinging and flying off and splashing around on the microphone there. I might get a little out of breath, and I might be, my stream of consciousness, my neurons, my brain stems might be flying around in all different directions because I myself, as we get back to today's topic, the Adderall shortage, I do not have my medication. I have been prescribed Adderall personally, for over a decade, about 12, I don't know, maybe 13 years now. But I am also been affected by this goddamn shortage, that I even question the term shortage, because we'll get into it. But let's just say for now, as it stands, the topic of today's episode that I've had so many listeners, dozens of people slide into my DMs over the last few months. And in fact, since October of last year, October of 2022, this shortage was officially named. I know folks who've been telling me even well before that they've had problems getting their prescriptions filled. Part of that is stigma, and part of that is now that the FDA announced officially back in October of 2022 that there was an Adderall shortage, a shortage of the medication, the ADHD medication Adderall. In a lot of different forms, different milligrams, immediate release, extended release, et cetera, et cetera. So, bear with me if I'm a little all over the place. Like I said, it's 101 degrees and I got no stimulants for my brain. I drank about half a Monster Energy. I fucking puked in my own mouth. I took a dump and I said, I can't even finish this garbage. And so now here I am on the mic. So, again, forgive me if we're all a little all over the place, but, I'm going to try to keep the train on the tracks for this solo episode, as we dive into this. And I want to thank the listeners so much. First of all, just your support, every week of just listening, chiming in. Like I said, people sliding into the DMs. I've got a bunch of them specifically, saying, hey, Murph, in passing, you said this or that about the Adderall shortage. What do you really think about it? What's you like to take it a few layers deep, sometimes way down the rabbit hole. So careful what you wish for, listeners. But people said, I've been experiencing this myself. And, depending on where you are in the country, this is a state by state thing. And hey, listen, supply chains, we know they're so delicate and they're so complex, be impossible to understand. But as we've seen, some things have no problem, flying around the country. Other things sometimes there's shortages. It's very interesting to see what's what's available at any hours at all hours, and what's and all of a sudden what you turn on the faucet and there's nothing coming out. Anyhow, people, I just got 2 emails this morning that I opened up, and one of them was wonderful. I get some trolls, people who listen to the program, and they, as anyone who speaks publicly into a microphone flings things out there into the world, you're going to get trolls, and God bless them. I love the trolls. I appreciate trolls because just like with anything, you need the yin and the yang. You need to say, well, if there's something, beautiful in the world, there's got to be something hideous in the world. And it's not even saying trolls are necessarily hideous. I'm just saying the juxtaposition between people who push back and want honest discourse and trolls. You need those two things side by side to have something to compare it to. So I love people who do genuinely push back a little bit. So please, write in if you want to say, hey, let's powder this guy's little bottom and tell him he's doing a great job. Hey, you're funny. I love listening to you. Hemming and hawing all day. Great job. Keep it up. I agree with everything you say. But I also love people dialing in 443 MK Ultra, selfmedicatedpod@gmail.com, @Murph Meyer on Instagram. I'm plugging all these for the purpose of follow, don't follow, whatever the fuck. Hit me up if you want to chat about things. You want to push back about something as well. I like that. I like discourse. So if you disagree and you want to say, what the fuck are you talking about, man? This is this. There's this. What about this? What about that? Love it. Love it. And I'd love for people to come on the program who disagree with me. I'm having a harder time getting some of those people. Lucas Manfield, I'm looking directly at you, writer for Willamette Week, who I'd love to have on for a little bit of a debate. Pardon me, just flinging my arms around, banging the microphone. Maybe some sweat. Maybe that was sweat that hit the mic. Like I said, it's 101. Anyhow, the Adderall shortage here. So people sent me some emails, some great ones. One of them had 24 or more, but 30 some links to articles they sent me. So perhaps their Adderall is not in shortage. Whoever sent me this email, because they had some great links here that I was able to pull up. They did my research for me on this one, and I've been peeping. Of course, it's been in the news. But as we know, as I always say with the Substance Report, I'm not even going to play the sound effect. This is a solo episode. What the hell? It's just me going here. But the Substance Report's a segment I love to do on my program where I talk about, the mainstream media's narrative on substance use is trash. It always has been and likely always will be when you talk about the corporate-owned media here. And so they've been talking a little bit about the Adderall shortage, but of course the framing is always wonky. The framing is terrible. You look up at the wall, you say, what's this article? What's this piece of journalism here hanging in this frame? Well, this frame is upside down, for Christ's sake. So we like to reframe these a little bit here and say like, well, what's really going on? So I don't know if you've heard this, if you are someone who's prescribed Adderall or any ADHD medications, Vyvanse, Ritalin, there's others out there. You've likely experienced this yourself, but even if not, you may very well have heard about this Adderall shortage in the old USA here. And so back in October 2022, they officially called it. Now, where I'll start here, because there's a few elements here, but where I just want to start, just to be clear of where I stand on this as a shortage, because these are the questions. Again, I'm off my meds, so I'm desperately. I've got some notes here and some things I want to hit to get through. So let's keep this on the tracks to start. I would just like to make my comparisons here from the Adderall shortage to the opioid epidemic, because of course the two are intertwined in some ways. Now, when I use the language here that I'm going to use of the mainstream media to talk about these things, you're going to hear things like legitimate prescriptions. You're going to hear things like these meds were overprescribed. You'll hear stuff like that. Now, my personal thoughts, if you're a regular listener of the program, you've heard this 9 million fucking times. So pardon me, but I'm hoping maybe we're getting new listeners. It looks like from the old analytics here, we got some new people tuning in. So if you're not aware of where I stand on this, it's like, look, man, let us take our drugs. Everybody should be taking our drugs. We're talking about adults. Now, the over-prescribing, again, using their language, of medications potentially for children at young ages rather than other interventions, that's another issue entirely. And that's up to the parents, of course. But if you're talking about people pushing that on people, I would only just say this. You've got us on a capitalist death march. Okay? You've shoved us into these boxes from the time we show up at your public schools in fucking kindergarten, first grade, whatever. You show up in the schools, you've got us on a capitalist death march, which continues on until we die at the end of the death march. We produce, we consume. We produce for you. You exploit our labor. We consume, and die. That's your game plan for us. And by your, I mean the elites, the 1%. And by us, I mean us. Now, if that sounds too, oh my God, here we go with this again. It's just the truth. Forget the politics of it. I think no matter where you fall on the political spectrum, that's just true. And I think we've all arrived at that conclusion, I think. So that's not, no hot takes there. But I'm just saying, if that's the case, then Jesus Christ Almighty, let us do the drugs we need to do on the death march that you have us on here. And whether that's ups or downs, lefts, rights, whatever pills we need to take, whatever powders and pills and liquids, whatever sort of substances chemically we need to get through this, goddammit, just let us have them. Is that too much to ask? Oh, my word. But you got to meddle. They got to meddle. Because, of course, there's people who are, the profiteers here are your, your big pharma and then your middlemen as your CVS, your Walgreens, your Rite Aids, your Walmart pharmacy, all that shit. So it's your middlemen and, your kingpins, your Sacklers, your Purdue Pharmas, then you got your middlemen as the pharmacists who are shilling them out. So we watched what happened with the opioid epidemic. We just saw this play out. In that case, it was, again, overprescribed. Doctors were overprescribing. I don't give a shit whether you're taking them on label or off label. I mean, look, people who know me, I'll take on, off, every which way. I'll pop pills I found in sofa cushions or, under the bench in a subway car. Look, I'll pop pills from wherever they come from. I'm an experimental fellow. That's neither here nor there. But my point is, I don't give a fuck whether you are prescribed it or you're not prescribed it. The prescribing process to me is absurd in general, especially for something, from psychiatrists, psychologists. This entire, the whole manual, if you ever get a chance, it's a beefy read. But even if you want to skim it, the DSM is, there's just their whole, it shifts and changes. And, I'm not even talking about in the early 1900s when, they're locking women in utility closets, for hysteria, diagnosed with hysteria. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about in my own lifetime. You've seen this whole practice of psychiatry and psychology change. And, there's a lot of subjectivity to it. So whatever, that's between people who are, your own personal prescriber. You would think it should be between the patient, the prescriber. And sometimes people struggle with different doctors. That's why you got to go try to find a doctor. Some people can't fucking get a doctor because they don't have any fucking healthcare. All these issues, all these barriers, basically, for no real reason other than the profit and the control. So now these are the two sides we have tugging at this. These federal agencies, the FDA and the DEA, are shifting blame, because I want to look at this one article that the first article that I just want to look at here is this FDA and DEA. This is now recent. This is August. This is a recent article here, August this month, that is saying FDA and DEA call on drug makers to boost manufacturing amid ongoing shortage of prescription stimulants. Now, what's hilarious about this is now they're somehow claiming that the pharmaceutical companies aren't pushing out the drugs that they make a lot of money on, when of course the precursor chemicals are set by the DEA. So they limit the amount that can be produced of these drugs. Any controlled substance. They say, here are the precursor chemicals. This is what goes into making these drugs. That are hilariously, essentially making the same drugs as the illicit drugs that are out there. In the case of OxyContin and opioids, you're talking about heroin, fentanyl. And in the case of Adderall, you're talking about methamphetamine. So again, amphetamines in general, I'm not saying that the chemistry is exactly the same, but I'm saying it's very similar. And so that's just funny in and of itself as an aside. But these are the ones that the DEA says, here's the amount that you can make every year of these drugs. And there's a quota. that they look at, and the idea is to prevent diversion. That's the whole thing. There is we don't want these drugs to fall into the wrong hands. They got to be in the right hands of those who are prescribed. Now, the opioid epidemic. The reason this to me is tragically the same fucking playbook is that they said they were overprescribed, so then they pulled the rug out from under, and now you've got people who are being labeled legitimate pain patients who are having a problem getting their opioids that they've been prescribed for decades, and that is true, and I feel for them tremendously. But where I run into a problem with some of the legitimate pain patients, and I'm doing these fucking air quotes like an asshole that you can't even see because I'm just on the mic, and it's a douchey thing to do anyway. But forget all of that. I'm saying legitimate pain patients is what they're being labeled as in the media. There's no solidarity here at all between the legitimate pain patients and others taking OxyContin. Because the idea being like, well, what the fuck is legitimate? And besides, why are we differentiating between physical, let's say back pain, and emotional distress or fun time, party time? Like, who gives a goddamn? The point is, the medication should just be, these are chemical substances. Let them be available to whoever wants to use them. And people as adults using them, you then have the consequences of maybe overusing them, whatever that means to you, and potentially becoming physically dependent on them or psychologically dependent or whatever it is. And then there should be public health interventions available to you to help you through that process. That seems pretty simple, but we've struggled with that forever as a society. But the problem what we have there is that was the narrative with opioids. And now here we are with the Adderall stimulants and other stimulants prescribed for ADHD. And it's the same kind of thing. People turn to the streets like they did with opioids. And now here we are with a Adderall shortage and a fentanyl surplus. And you got people going to the streets to get their Adderall because they can't get it, through their doctor and through pharmacies. Because at every stage here, you now have doctors being questioned, and you now have pharmacy techs and people who are filling these at the pharmacies because they just had a huge lawsuit through the opioid epidemic. It wasn't just Sacklers and Purdue Pharma. It was your CVS's, your Rite Aids, your Walgreens that were also have lawsuits in the tens of millions and upwards of billions combined. So, there's this idea that they're now forcing pharmacists, and I've seen this, like I said, I've experienced this firsthand myself through filling at different pharmacies. And I know others have had this issue as well. There's a stigma attached to just getting your fucking medication for the month. So you go in with a prescription, which when COVID-19 started, the public health emergency was declared. And again, I'm ping-ponging all over the place, so bear with me. The beginning of COVID, there was a big spike in prescriptions for ADHD medication for all sorts of reasons that we can go through. And again, I don't even give a shit to fucking justify them because I don't care what they are. People wanted to use drugs. People are using drugs. Let them use drugs is my take. So there's plenty of articles out there if you want to see like, well, why was it? Was it because, people had to work from home? Is it the capitalist death march that I previously mentioned? Is it the fact that stimulants certainly have shown a lot have helped a lot of people with depression and anxiety? They work for all sorts of reasons. So as the pandemic was closing in around us and the hysteria and the hype behind it, the literal death count of bodies, on your cable news channels everywhere. All of the, it was all politicized. It was all, we all know what happened with the COVID-19 pandemic and what continues to, as we're now gaslit into it's over, it's not over, whatever. Let's just say the collective mental health of the world, I would say, but as we're just talking here, at least in America, was piss poor at best. We all kind of felt that, I believe, to varying degrees. So, people having to focus and get work done, amphetamines are good for that. So, people looking for Adderall. Now, of course, all these cottage industries pop up. The moment because normally you have to prescribe controlled substances, and Adderall is a controlled substance, Schedule II controlled substance. So the Controlled Substances Act, which is a DEA thing, is you need to be prescribed by a doctor in person, and you go and to the pharmacy and get that prescription filled. Now, with technology moving along, my doctor's an old school fellow, approaching his 90s, in fact. Wonderful doctor, wonderful human being, matter of fact. But he doesn't do things. He does nothing digital. He's all analog. He writes out on his prescription pad and always has. And so he's mailed me those prescription pads when I haven't been in New York. I've been with him, like I said, 12 years. So that's my situation. But a lot of people's situation now with telehealth is when COVID-19 hit, you couldn't even leave the house for a stretch to get places. The doctors were not seeing patients in person unless it was an emergency context. So telehealth pops up. The federal government, DA, everybody says, okay, well, we have this public health emergency that's been declared, which means we're going to loosen all the restrictions on telehealth. Now, this hit a lot of people, and I won't get into, this could be for another episode potentially, what that did for people with who are getting their methadone, their Suboxone, their buprenorphine. There's a bunch of other there was a bunch of other repercussions from this telehealth. That really helped people tremendously, as a matter of fact, regardless of whether it's a pandemic or not. This is accessibility we're talking about, which a lot of people have a fucking problem with. And anyone who's been on any opioid treatment programs, whether it's methadone, like I said, bupe, whatever it is, knows the fucking nightmare of hoops you got to jump through to get your to get care. But aside from that, that's another story. As it relates to these Adderall prescriptions, is that you were able to get a doctor, through a virtual Zoom meeting, whatever the fuck, and then in some cases, of course, because this law was somewhat new, or the public health emergency wasn't exact on how this was going to work, your cottage industries popped up. Of course, it's a for-profit biz, like we say. So of course, you see the vampires start to come out to feast. Again, I'm torn on this in the sense that I call them vampires because they are, but it's also just like, again, people you want to have them have their fucking drugs. The only reason the vampires get to exist is because they've kept it under wraps, and because it's a for-profit model in so many ways. But regardless of that, a lot of these cottage industries popped up, and you get Instagram ads, and anybody, maybe you Googled, all you got to do is fucking Google it once, ADHD, or, do I need Adderall, or what the fuck's going on? Is the world on fire? Whatever it is you Googled, you get ads that pop up then. And so you're on Instagram. People are saying, well, hey, look, all you got to do is here's a minute survey. You take a survey real quick here. Do you have ADHD? Yeah, sure you do. You pop a thing, I have a problem doing this. I can't fucking focus as the fucking literal world is on fire outside. I'm having a hard time here on my laptop getting these spreadsheets in to my boss, or whatever it is, whatever line of work you're in. I don't know. But when people were working from home, except for the essential workers who were left to fucking get sick and die, which is most of the working class, but the professional managerial class, let's just say, wherever you fall on the spectrum, some people worked from home, or whether you didn't work from home, whatever the hell. That's an aside. I'll probably edit that out because that's a whole nother conversation. Or maybe I'll leave it in. Either way, a lot of people who were working from home, we saw, get these ads, and so they're getting now new prescriptions, and these are adults. This is adult prescribe. These are adult. These are adult diagnosis ADHD. So now, of course, the shortage of Adderall is affecting a lot of, the children who are also on this medication. It's just affecting everybody. And so people were the adult diagnosis of ADHD went way up at the start of the pandemic. And so then, they see these telehealth operations popping up saying, hey, we'll hook you up with a doctor. Now, this was the same thing we saw for anybody who fucked around in some of the states where when cannabis was first medically, cleared. California was a big one. I remember I was out in LA for a gig, and what was it? Nug MD, I believe. I'm giving a shout out to them. I don't know if they're still an operation or not. Likely not. But there was a thing called Nug MD, and I was getting emails from them forever. goddamn, I couldn't unsubscribe from that enough times. They just kept coming for me. But I was out in LA once just visiting in California. And so to get delivered, to get a cannabis delivery to my hotel, I had to, I went through a quick process, which was just a phone call with a doctor, went through this app, filled out a thing. They sent me, I got a quick call with the doctor, said, what's going on? I said, I don't know. I need to get high. I'm out here in LA. I'm feeling anxious or, whatever the hell I said. I mumbled something. And then next thing I knew, I had, they were delivering some cannabis to me. Through NugMD. So, these things, these one-stop operations that say we're going to set up the patients with the doctors and we're going to clear it legally, because this is where the boundaries of the law are that we're falling in between. Maybe we'll, someday have to speak to this in court. Maybe we won't. Let's pop it up. Let's make a shit ton of money. Let's put the lawyers on retainer and we'll just, keep making money until this maybe becomes an issue. So this is the same thing that happened here where the big ones were, cerebral. And what's this other one here? There's a Done, I believe it's called. There were two big ones. These are online, telehealth apps, whatever the hell. Not software. What am I? I'm 1,000 years old. Whatever it's called. They're just operations. One was called Done, and the other one was a Cerebral, I believe. And so there were two of the big ones, but there were a bunch of them. Anyway, they pop up and they say, okay. We're going to get we're going to hook up doctors who sign up to us with patients who need to be diagnosed. So because of the public health emergency that was in place from COVID federally, they were able to, state by state. It was all, state boundaries were because of the federal emergency were erased. And it was basically just like, hook up doctors with patients, get them the prescriptions, and they can just, digitally, virtually send them into pharmacies and they'll fill those scripts. And there'll be no physical script. It'll all be, done digitally. So, this went on for a little while. And what initially happened was because the DEA is, of course, a year behind in their allotment of the precursor chemicals to make Adderall. So they say, here's this, and this, the diamphetamine salts, the filler, the whatever, all the stuff that needs to go into the making of a FDA approved generic form of Adderall, or name brand, is whatever it is. This is what goes into making Adderall. So you can get this amount of chemicals every year to make them. Now, of course, the DEA operates however the fuck DEA wants to do. So they could crank up. They could say, well, there's more available whenever they want. Like they're like, well, our hands are tied by ourselves. So sorry, we tied our own hands and we can't untie them now. So that's just silly to begin with, but that's the whole point, is that they were like, well, just because this spiked up in 2020, we can only make so much for 2020. They didn't give more for 2021, 2022, 2023. So they're not really giving any more of the precursor chemicals to make more Adderall to hit the demand. Just basic supply and demand shit here. So they're not doing that. And they were blaming for a long time. They just wouldn't even speak to it. It's basically just like there's a mysterious shortage. No one knows why. And now on the heels, because there's nothing been said by the federal government, at first there wasn't for a long time, they weren't speaking to this officially, you got pharmacists, individual pharmacists have to make the call after these huge lawsuits that just came in from the opioid epidemic. You're leaving it up to pharmacists to be like, well, I don't know if this is, this was a telehealth thing. What do? We just cut off all telehealth? Anyone who's been diagnosed with ADHD via telehealth in the last couple of years, we're not filling your prescriptions. We're only filling prescriptions of previous, patients who've come to this pharmacy before 2020. Like we're only or maybe we're doing some people who've been, but now you move, people move. I went from New York to Pennsylvania to Oregon, and believe me, at least I had that physical prescription, but I still took a lot of shit. I mean, anybody who's out there who knows, you fucking try to go and fill something at a new pharmacy. Jesus Christ on the cross. It doesn't matter what it is. Any sort of scheduled, controlled substance. I mean, Jesus, it is madness. I mean, you're calling people, and these pharmacists, I've talked to some of them that don't want to go, public here. A couple, a family friend, a close family friend works at CVS as a pharmacist. I mean, the shit that goes on behind closed doors and the conversations, the emails. I'm not over here trying to be the goddamn WikiLeaks of Adderall shortage emails here, but I saw some from a pharmacist friend at CVS, and Jesus Christ, It's madness. It's madness what they're asking of people to make snap judgments on somebody coming in to get a goddamn prescription filled. I mean, this is nuts. This is why the fact that they're even asking them to do this is just silly. It's silly. It's silly, but it in fact, unfortunately, has dire consequences, not only for people who just, can't get the medications at all and are now fucking struggling. Because, man, I'll tell you what, as anyone who's taking this medication regularly, I'm firing off into a microphone. I don't even know what the fuck I said 30 seconds ago into this microphone, but I'm just doing a goddamn podcast. I mean, what are the stakes here? For me, it means a lot. I give a hell of a lot of shit about this program. And I know people who listen regularly also do. And thank you so much. So I don't mean to downplay that. But I mean, a lot of people have different jobs where, Christ, and responsibilities just on a day-to-day basis, that when you pull the rug out from under people with medication, there are fucking disastrous consequences. And that's irresponsible, immoral. It's heinous. It's a heinous thing to do. It's a heinous thing to do to have to judge people at every stage and have the stigma of going, well, yeah, I went to this pharmacy to get it filled. I went to that pharmacy to get it filled. I mean, it's brutal. It's brutal out there. And so that's where we're at in terms of this shortage. And I also, again, the shortage, it's funny that they wouldn't take responsibility for it. The FDA would not say, the DEA, the FDA or the DEA would not say, or the CIA, none of them would acknowledge what's really going on here with these precursor chemicals, and saying, and now calling on the pharmaceutical companies to be like, hey, you better make more. Like this is now almost a year. We're almost a year into this, and we now get the articles coming out where they're saying, the FDA and the DEA are saying, hey, Teva Pharmaceuticals, let's go, snap two. Why aren't you making more of this shit? Seems like people need it. It's like, get the fuck out of here. This is you. This is all about you. And you're not making a statement to say, well, you just had these, the pharmacy sued to high hell over the opioid epidemic. But tragically now, to continue the mapping there with the opioids, is that you're pushing people out into the street with an Adderall shortage and a fentanyl surplus. And that's a fucking dangerous combination. And there's still states that refuse to legalize testing kits for people, so that they don't know what the fuck it is they're getting. It is a poison drug supply. So, I mean, what are we doing here? We're watching. It's one thing to bang your head against the wall and then take a generation off and do it again, like we saw from, the crack epidemic into the opioid epidemic. But now we're like, we're right here. We're right here against it. I mean, this shit's still happening with the opioid epidemic. We're still knee deep in all of that. And now here we are. And it's the same goddamn playbook. So pretty frustrating to watch firsthand, regardless of my own selfish bullshit if I can't get my pills. It is rough. The day-to-day stuff is rough without them, especially when you have a regimen that you feel good about and it has worked for you for years and years. And now that's kind of all thrown into a spiral here. And you're forced to do what you can do, to fly around to different pharmacies and just deal with that. Deal with the like, hey, I know you don't have it here. Do you have it here? Does this, hey, am I drug seeking? Yeah, I'm fucking drug seeking. I'm a seeker of drugs. So what? Here's a fucking piece of paper that says I can seek drugs. And I don't even give a shit. I'll wipe my ass with this piece of paper. But I guess that's what we need. And even when you have that, there's no guarantee of anything. And some of the excuses, like from these leaked emails. I will be you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to go back on that. I will be the WikiLeaks of the emails coming out of CVS pharmacy. I will be, because I got a whistleblower, an anonymous whistleblower that I will never, ever out. So yeah, some of the shit they say on there, the excuses you got to give to people when they have it in stock. We don't have it in stock. And even before that, it was, oh, well, we can't. We can't fill without, your birth date is written here, but your age is not. My age is not written on the the prescription. And now I got to go, well, I got this mailed from my doctor. Oh, well, your doctor's not in state. Well, and I go, well, actually, no, I looked it up in this state. In Oregon, you can have out of state. It's not that it can't be filled, but it just, you can only be filled within 6 months. I mean, you want to drive yourself fucking batty. Go through the state by state regulations of the dispensing of controlled substances for prescriptions. I mean, it's madness. It's all madness. Anyhow, they don't give a shit about us. We know this. The whole reason that they're relying on this, the whole justification behind this is dog dick. It's just slippery, slimy dog dick. That's all it is. The federal regulations saying, well, we want to look out for you. It's a paternal thing. We understand there's going to be predatory behavior and we need to protect you from that. And when people tell you need to take a pill, if you might not need to take a pill, maybe you need to take half a pill and not a whole pill. Maybe you need to take no pills, but that's for us to decide, not you. And we'll take care of you and we'll watch out for you. Then on the other side, you get people going, well, hey, look, telehealth here. We can prescribe you anything at all times. But again, let that to adults to figure that out. Because if you really gave a shit, you know what I mean? If the federal agency specifically really gave a shit, you've got over 4 million children. Now, we're just going to talk about kids here for a second. You got over 4 million kids out there without health care at all. None. No federal, no state subsidies, no nothing. Just over 4 million kids, no health care. Over 1.5 million kids unhoused. 9 million kids with food insecurities. So, if you got federal agencies out there with these billion plus dollar budgets, I'm looking at you, DEA. I'm looking at you, FDA, HUD, every fucking one of them. Just look at their budgets. They're outrageous. They got a ton of fucking our tax dollars flying in. And they're out there saying, we're here to take care of you. We're here to watch out for you. Well, we've got millions of children who are going to bed without a roof over their head, with an empty belly, and no fucking medicine available to them. So until you can even pretend to deal with that, we don't want to hear your nonsense about we're here to take care of you. Give me a fucking break with that. I mean, I think we're all hip. That's not a hot take by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, that's just, I think we've all are well aware that there's no, that's not why they exist. So please, again, all I'm asking here, at the end of this, has it been 4 hours or has it been 4 minutes? This is the problem here. So until I'm medicated, buckle up, listeners, because I don't know what the hell these episodes are going to be. Anyhow, I think we've reached the end. I think I've solved it. And really, this is just to open up a dialogue. And I want to once again thank everyone out there who's written in to talk about it. If I missed a beat on something, if there's an article you really want me to talk about specifically, if you want to come on the goddamn program, and I'm not kidding, anybody, if you're a pharmacist out there, you want to come on anonymously, look, we'll WikiLeaks this shit. I'll keep you. I got a little modulator here. I got one of these buttons on this fucking thing I got here is a modulator. I can modulate the voice. We can do an interview. We can talk about this. We need to explore this further. This is by no means over because there's a lot of weird shit now that the grace period and the temporary public health emergency stuff from the DEA is over in November. It's going to be up. So this whole shit pardon. Ooh, that monster's coming back up. This whole shit show is just beginning, is the point. So we better buckle up. And I would just like to say to everyone out there. And so, I would just want to just say to anyone out there listening, if you want to start this dialogue, you want to get involved in this discourse, please, selfmedicatedpod@gmail.com, at Murph Meyer on Instagram, slide into the DMs, 443MK Ultra. Or if you want to come on the goddamn program and be a guest, if you have some sort of insight or outsight or any sight at all into this issue, please let me know. And I'd love to have you on as a guest. Otherwise, I may rant and rave a little bit more about this in the future. But for now, I'm going to have to call it because I am sweating like a hog and I may pass out. It's 101 degrees. We'll see. Hopefully, temperature dips a bit. I'll talk to you again soon. And remember, please be safe out there. If you can get your hands on any testing strips, links in the description of this episode as to where you can pick up your fentanyl testing strips online. Next Distro is a phenomenal organization. Dance Safe's another one. I'll put all the links out there. So please be safe because we do, in fact, have an Adderall shortage and a fentanyl surplus. Until next time, thank you so much for tuning in. This has been your weekly dose.
In America, there's legal use of sleeping with your children, with your daughters, with your sons, and with your husband.
Self-Medicated Weekly Dose is hosted and produced by me, Murph Meyer, with support from Pop Culture Collaborative. Our theme song is My Congressman by 15, courtesy of Jeff Ott and Hopeless Records. Original artwork and production design by Diana Kolsky. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed the program, you can listen to new episodes of Weekly Dose every Wednesday, wherever you get your podcasts. While you're at it, subscribe to the Self-Medicated YouTube channel to see new video clips from the show each week. Follow me on Instagram at Murph Meyer. And for some top-shelf harm reduction resources, head over to selfmedicatedpod.com. Also, don't forget, you can call the Weekly Dose podcast anytime to leave me a voicemail message with your thoughts on drugs and the people who use them. Just pick up the phone and dial 443-MK-ULTRA. All right, that's about it for me. I'll see you next week. Love and solidarity. Goodbye.